Like I said, we're interrupting our regularly scheduled programming of Mitzvahs Hatilios Ba'aretz for, I think there's only one more of these. Okay, there's only this class, then one more class here, and there's a couple of classes that you'll have with Mrs. Rosen. This is, we're having a class on the aspects of Halachos of the Holocaust. I explained to you at the beginning of the semester. I always really thought it would be a good idea to have a whole semester class on this topic. I think it's a very, very powerful topic that gets into a lot of important halachos about how, feel free to keep working on that. You unplugged it to plug, I would like the fan if that's possible. Is there another plug in here, or that's the only one?
An extension cord.
I'm sorry, if you need a plug. You just turned the fan on, I was good. I'm sorry. Thank you so much. Well, no, that'll be too much. It's going to make a whirlwind. One aside. Okay, sorry. So, I told you I feel it's like a very important class to teach and to learn because we are learning about how Klal Yisrael conducts themselves under the most extreme conditions, most extreme circumstances, and we learn a lot about ourselves, about the Torah, about the expectations of the Torah under these circumstances. So the topic that I wanted to cover today is a topic that was a major aspect of the Holocaust, and that was the aspect of Jews who worked for/with, whether they knew about it or didn't know about it. We'll address all of these aspects, but Jews who were put in the position that they had to make decisions on behalf of the community for the Germans. This is referred to, the term that's used is called the Judenrat, which means like the Jewish group, the Jewish establishment, the Jewish government, and it was basically, the story is like this, that wherever the Germans went and established with the areas that they took over in Poland, and they established their rule there, so the Jews were gathered into areas, right, into ghettos, and in each one of those ghettos, in each of those cities where these were set up, so they needed people to manage the affairs of the ghetto. They needed to have somebody who was managing, or an organization or a group of people that would be managing, thank you so much, that would be managing, the Jewish affairs in the ghetto, and this is referred to as the Judenrat. Judnrat is usually how it's spelled. The Judenrat, which means like the Jewish government, the Jewish group. So I just want to give a tiny bit of historical background, just 2-3 minutes of just years and dates and history to understand when these particular shilas came up, when these questions were being asked. So we know the Nazi Party came to power in Germany in 1933. That's when Hitler rose to power with the Nazi Party. However, it wasn't until 1939 that they invaded Poland, where the vast majority of Eastern European Jews, 3 million Jews, were in Poland. And when Germany invaded Poland in September of 1939, that really, I guess, officially began World War II. That's when Germany invaded from that side, Russia invaded from the other side, Britain and England and America, the Allies came in and they said, no, we're going to stand up for Poland. But this was a devastating time for Jews because Poland, like I said, had 3 million Jews living either in the major cities. Warsaw, which was the capital of Poland, and the major city had over 250,000 Jews, over 300,000 Jews that lived in Warsaw. And most of them not religious, but there was a large percentage of which that were. There were tens of thousands of Ger Hasidim. The city of Ger is just outside of Warsaw, so Warsaw had tens of thousands of Ger Hasidim. They're the major city centers, but then there were also the Jews that were living out, hundreds of thousands of millions that were living out in little shtetl, in little towns all around the Polish countryside. And what happened when the Nazis came to power, so these Jews were consolidated. Either they were rounded up and killed by the groups of Nazis called Einsatzgruppen, whose jobs it were to go into small Jewish towns or to small villages, Polish villages, and to separate the Jews, round up all the Jews and kill them. This is where you have these stories of people being brought out to the cemetery or at the pits outside of the town, terrible stories. Or they were consolidated and then sent to the ghettos. The ghettos were areas that were prisons. They were literally walled-in areas, sections of cities that had high concentrations of Jews. For instance, the Warsaw Ghetto, Krakow Ghetto, Lodz, all the major cities had basically a ghetto attached to them. And the Jews were housed in this area. And what went on was the Jews in the beginning at least, they were given work permits, and they had to work either in the ghetto or out of the ghetto, or work in factories for the German government or for the war effort. But as time went on, the ghettos ended up becoming basically transportation centers. They were places that the Jews would be shipped from other cities, from other towns and villages, from Shtetl into these ghettos, and then from the ghettos they would be put onto trains sent to extermination centers. Basically, each one of the major ghettos had an extermination center that was associated with it. Near Krakow was Auschwitz, near Lublin was Majdanek, and near Warsaw was Treblinka. And these were extermination centers, which we all know the horror stories of people being brought in on trains, a few people being saved because they were able to work to help the camp run, but everybody else brought into the back and sent to gas chambers and killed on the spot. I'll just tell you something unbelievable. When you guys were on the Tiyul, I had the opportunity to get together with one of my Rebbeim, Rabbi Yosef Spinner, who learns in a yeshiva called Shar HaShemayim over here in Yerushalayim. I'm Rechov Rashi in the Gula, if you're familiar with it. And while I was there learning with him, an old man came over and asked him a question, and they spoke for a minute or two. And as he walked away, he told me, this man is 90 years old. He's an old day here learning in the yeshiva, and a 90-year-old man. And he said twice he stood outside the gas chambers in Auschwitz. Twice he stood out there undressed, ready to go in, and there was some sort of a technical problem, and they didn't, those people they sent back to their barracks. And then again, the next day the same thing happened, and again there was some sort of a problem, and they sent them home, and in the end he ended up being liberated. Unbelievable story. Just point back this person to me. You never know these, old Jews what they went through, in terms of these times. Give me 1 second. So that was the process. But what happened within the ghettos was run by the Jews. In other words, there was no Germans or Nazis in the ghettos themselves, except for let's say officers and people who go in to do things. But the ghettos themselves were run by the Jews. There was a Jewish government, a Jewish police force. Depending on how developed the Judenrat was, there would be a postal service for the Jews and everything. They ran their own show. They ran like their own mini government within the ghetto, and that's what allowed life to go on in any which way that was normal. They had schools and everything that they would try to run. However, the whole idea, as far as the Nazis were concerned, was just a ploy. The whole idea of the Judenrat, as far as the Nazis were concerned, it was just a way to efficiently manage the Jews, and ultimately a way to get the Jews to transport themselves to the death camps without having to go in there physically and drag them to the trains. The Judenrat did it for them. The Judenrat instituted systems by which people were chosen and selected, right? It was called a selection, or an action. People were selected to go, and it wasn't called a selection, I was in the camp, so they would choose. It was an action, where they would select the people that would be sent to the trains. And they would tell them they were going to work or to resettlement in the East, but most of the time they knew, in fact, where the people were going. So what we're going to focus in now is on the following idea. When you have circumstances like this, and you have Jewish people placed under tremendous strain and tremendous suffering, and there's the oppressing nation, the Germans, want to set up a Jewish government in order to manage things within the ghetto. So is that something that a Jewish person should do or not? Is it the right thing to say, no, I have nothing to do with this, I'll take no part in this, I will not send you the number of people that you want to go, and I don't care that you're threatening to kill everybody in the ghetto, that's your business, I will not do anything? Or is it the right thing to say, look, we see that they're going to try to kill us, we see that things are terrible, the best that we can do is to try to work with them, the best that we can do is to try to save as many lives as we can. And yes, it's a terrible, evil, awful thing to do, to say, maybe these 50 people should be sent instead of those 50 people. But if sending those 50 people is going to save 50,000 people, so then that's the right thing to do. So these were the two mindsets of people, either people who were willing to go along with the Germans in order to try to save as many Jews as they could, or people that would refuse to. Unfortunately, you also had a third group, which would be like, psychopaths. You had people who were evil people, bad people that were Jews, that were not religious, no connection to anything, mobsters, gangsters, criminals, and stuff like this. And very often the Nazis knew that these would be the people that would make the most deals with them and would work with them the best. And they would often try to find people who they knew were corrupt and criminal, to work with them, especially in the camps. The people were made as kapos, people were made as captains of barracks, etc. Often were people who dafka were from the criminal world. Anyway, so we're going to zoom in on this. We're going to zoom in on this right now. The halacha of the Judenrat, this idea of how are Jews supposed to conduct themselves to try to save as many people or to not get involved at all. Yes,
I thought they just randomly picked Jews, okay, you're just going to be the one to drag the dead bodies out of the chamber. You're going to be the one to do this. How about they just randomly picked a sign everyone? Let's say there were people same way there were some Jews who dressed up as
well, you're talking like a much further down the line. You're talking in the concentration camps or in the extermination camps where they had different people doing different jobs and different things. How they selected them. We're talking way before that in the process. We're talking about in the ghettos themselves. The Judenrat was the Jewish government. So, for example, they were in charge of deciding who got a work permit. Right? Who was given a work card that would be able to go out and earn money for their family? Sometimes whoever got a work card meant that this is a person who could live, and they would do an action, and they would come in and say, anybody who doesn't have a work card, you're getting onto the trains. Sometimes it would be even more proactive than that. Sometimes they would have to choose, send us 500 people tomorrow to the train station, and you send us 500 people, and if you don't, then we're going to go in there and we're going to take 1,000 or 5,000 or kill everybody. These are the types of decisions that they were facing with. Okay, so but before we start getting into the halachic background, which is on the first page, I just want you to see this sefer that all this is taken from. It's an incredible sefer. It's called Hashoah B'Mekorot Rabbaniyim, the Holocaust from Rabbinic sources, it's an incredible sefer that goes through both by location and by topic all different aspects of the Holocaust and how different Rabbanim at the time and people who were there, how they approached various different issues. So there's a whole chapter here on the Judenrat and how the Judenrat functioned and what the approach of the Torah and the religious Jews were to the Judenrat. And who took part and who didn't. So this is Perek Chaf Aleph, chapter 21 of the Sefer. Judenrat, Mishtara Yehudit, V'Anshe Kapo. So this chapter is about the topic of the Judenrat, the Jewish police, which was also a feature of the ghetto, which was a whole police force of Jews. They didn't have guns, obviously. The Nazis wouldn't give them guns, but they had clubs and handcuffs and this, and they would beat up the other Jews. They would run the ghetto in terms of the police. V'Anshe Kapo, and Kapo were the people who were in the camps. Each barracks of a couple of hundred people, several hundred people, up to close to 1,000 maybe, would have a capo, a person who was in charge of their barracks. And these, like I said, these people were brutal, evil people. So let's just see how the Sefer begins. The first paragraph here just introduces the topic. Lefi horosav shel rosh mishtarat habitachon Hanazi Reinhard Heinrich. According to the direction of the head of the Nazi police, this Yamach Shemo, this person, Heydrich, is starting in September of 1939. This is just 3 weeks after they invaded Poland. I just remember this because it's my birthday, on September 5th, 1939. And this is already on September 21st, a couple of weeks later, that this is already happening. Moshel had general government of Poland. Okay, let's just understand what he's saying here. When Germany invaded Poland and they took over this country, so they completely subdued that country. There was no longer a Polish government, right? There was no longer an independent Polish government. Now, this was a part of Germany, and Germany instilled, they called this area called the general government. That was what this area was called, Poland. And they installed a person there, this guy, Hans Frank, who was basically now became the president, so to speak, of this massive area, of this area of Poland. Who kamu Judenraten. So they set up these Jewish groups, these Jewish assemblies, b'shitchei Poland akvushim, in the conquered areas of Poland. B'meshach hazman hukvu Judenraten gam ba'atzot acherot shenichbashu al yidei Germanim sheniku lefamim b'shemot shonim. He says the same system was used then in Lithuania and Ukraine and all the other areas that the Nazis came into power. So they used the same system, even though in some places you'll see that it's referred to by different names. Okay, let's turn the page. Somehow the photocopied upside down the pages. every other page. I'm not sure we have to work this out. I think we're moving on to page 324 now. I kind of just lost track over here. One second. 323, 324, right? Should be on the other side. Okay, so let's see over here on the bottom where I have those two lines there. Kamur lamayla horola hakim es Judenrat in ba milamayla min shaltonot tegermenim. Like we said earlier, the whole institution of the Judenrat came from the very higher ups of the German government. Amnam la'acher shehutal kfar tafkid lahakim es Judenrat al echad mirashei hakihila al stam adam shenikla b'darkam. But once they selected a person, right, they picked a person to be the one who would be in charge of this area, of this Judenrat, then it was they chose the rest of them themselves, the Jews. In other words, it wasn't something that was like micromanaged by the Germans. They wanted the Jewish people themselves to choose the people. They would have like a mass meeting of the town in the main shul or wherever, and they would decide who's going to be this group of people. B'Iriyah Aishishok Nitztava Rav Shimon Rozovsky Al Yedei Germanim Lahakim B'Kilaso as a Judenrat. So here, this is one of the Gdolim. Rav Shimon Rozovsky was a great Rav before the war, and he was asked by the Germans in his town to be the one to set up the Judenrat. So he called a gathering together of the whole community, and he told them what was going on. Nobody would agree to do it. They had to draw lots in order to do it, because nobody would do it. Everybody refused to do it, and they would only do it based on drawing lots. There were very, very few people who were Shomer Torah mitzvos, true Jews, true Torah Jews, following the Torah, that would agree to do this. And even fewer would actually be the Jewish police. This is one of the Admorim, one of the great Hasidic rabbis. He would tell his Hasidim to have no connection whatsoever with the Judenrat. Whom he would warn them. A person who crosses the doorstep of the Judenrat building loses the chelik and olam haba. In other words, in his area, they held so much that the Judenrat were basically just accomplices of the Nazis. People that are just going on with the Nazis. Which again, you have to understand, a lot of times they did. These were people who were looking to, be either sometimes just a power-hungry person who saw this as an opportunity. Whenever there's a war and things get shaken up, people seize opportunity to have power or to save themselves and their families, and people like that. Very often it was real Rishayim that were there. Okay, but now let's address the question, the main question that comes up in these issues. Let's turn back to the first page now, the front page of the booklet, of the package, which is what happens in that scenario? What happens in a situation where the Germans come in and they say, look, this is now the Judenrat, this is the group of people, and they've decided to follow the Torah and to ask Rabbanim, which again they did in some places. In some places the Judenrat did seek the advice of the Gedolim and listen to it. Sometimes they would seek the advice and not listen to it. They would just, okay. So the Germans come in and they say, look, we have right now in the Warsaw Ghetto, right now there's 300,000 people that are living here, and even though the living conditions are terrible and people are dying of starvation, it's not a way to live, but people are alive. And the Germans say, look, we are starting to liquidate the ghetto, which is a term they use to clear out the ghetto and move everybody for resettlement to the east, right, which really meant going to Treblinka, to the death camps. And they tell the Judenrat that we need 6,000 people a day. This is what they asked for towards the end of the war. By the time the Warsaw Ghetto uprising began, they were asking for 6,000 people a day to show up at the Umschlagplatz, at the place where they would take the people out from, That's a day as well. So the government asks, the Germans say, the Nazis, Yamach Shemam, they say, okay, deliver us 1,000 people. And I say, no, I'm not going to do it. I refuse. They say, okay, then tomorrow we're coming in with machine guns, and we're just going to go through the streets, and we're just going to kill every man, woman, and child that we see until you provide us with 1,000 people. So what do you do? What do we do? Right? In this terrible situation, this happened. This is exactly what happened. There's a scene also. There's a movie about a concentration camp called Sobibor, which is another extermination camp. But there was a successful uprising in Sobibor. Right, there's a movie about it. It happens to be on one of the trips a number of years ago. We met one of the main protagonists from the movie, one of those kids that was involved in the thing. So we met him in Warsaw on the phone. Maybe we were there. He goes to the shul. Well, not anymore. He moved out to Texas, but he was there, and we spoke with him. It happens to be that this scene he told us is not true. This scene in the movie did not actually happen, but it's a very disturbing scene. But things like this did happen for sure in the camps. Basically, there was a scene where there was a number of people that tried to escape from Sobibor before the mass escape that was successful. Let's say there were 18 people that tried to escape. So he lined those people up with a machine gun, and he said, each one of you is now going to go choose one person to stand next to you, and we're going to kill all 36. And if you don't, then we're going to choose 10 for each one of you. Right? This is the choice that this Nazi gave. So again, it happens to be in this movie itself. He told us, it's still now for you. This movie itself, he told us that that never happened actually by him. He did not witness that. But the question is, what do you do? What would one do, God forbid, under such circumstances? What's the right thing to do? Do we do the math? Do we say, look, we have the opportunity here to save 300,000 people by giving 1,000? And even if we do 1,000 a day, they're not going to do it for a full year. So even if we give up half of the people, but we maybe will save the other half because maybe the war will end before all of those people get killed. Or do we say, no, we refuse to do anything at all? Thank you very much. We refuse to get involved. Okay,
it's like saying, isn't it like a person telling you, like, go kill this person, and if you don't, then I'll kill you and your family? It doesn't matter. You're not allowed to kill that person.
Okay, very good. So we're going to see that right now.
That scene wasn't true.
That scene was not true. That scene with the machine gun was not true. But other things that we thought were not true in the movie were true. This synagogue, there's in the movie, it shows scenes of like the men and the women in the camp dancing together and all sorts of things like that, which we always assumed was just for Hollywood, that they made it just to make it more interesting. But he said it's not true. He said that they do all sorts of things like psychological games to try to demoralize them and get them to do averas. Whatever, it was terrible thing. Anyway, so let's see the sources over here. So we're starting here. This is Yerushalmi, a Gemara Yerushalmi that discusses, a sad situation. Tani, we have a brayso that says the following: Siyut bnei Adam, Tanai Siyut bnei Adam shayu mahalchin b'derech upagu lehen goyim. So you have a caravan of people that is traveling in the desert on the way, and a band of pirates falls on them. V'amru tenu lanu echad mikem v'narogoto v'imlav harei anu horgim es kulchem. It says, give us one of you, and we're going to kill that person, or if not, we're going to kill all of you. Right? Exactly our scenario, right? Exactly this situation. You have the Nazis coming to a group of people and saying, give us one of you to kill, right? We're going to kill him, or we're going to kill all of you. Yeah. Afilu kulan nerogin lo yimsu nefesh achas miYisrael. So the halacha is, the Yerushalmi writes, even if everybody's going to end up getting killed, even if they're all going to be wiped out, we don't give over one soul of a Jewish person. So the halacha is, you don't give over. Everyone dies. That's it. Yichdu lahen echad kigon sheva ben bichri. Let's say they designate one person, they specify a person, like what happened with Sheva ben Bichri. Sheva ben Bichri was a descendant from Shaul, who was involved in an uprising against David HaMelech. He was like a Mored b'Malchus, and David HaMelech, in a similar situation, singled out Sheva ben Bichri. In that case, Yimsuru Oso v'lo yahargu. In that case, you give the person over and you don't get killed. Amr Reb Shimon ben Lakish v'hu sheyeh chayiv misa k'Sheva ben Bichri. That's provided, says Reish Lakish, that's provided that this person is actually chayiv misa like Sheva ben Bichri was, right? Sheva ben Bichri was actually a criminal. For Rabbi Yochanan Amar, Afal Pisha Edo Chayav Misa Kishavim et Bichri, even if he's not Chayav Misa. Okay, let me explain what this is saying. Okay, again, we have a scenario here. There's 10 people that are traveling. Okay, now one of these people, let's say, is a criminal. One of these people did a very bad thing. He killed somebody, right? He killed somebody and he's traveling with us. He happens to be a Jew. And now we're surrounded by the non-Jews, and they say to us, we know that you've got this murderer with you. Give us that murderer, or we're going to kill all of you. So in that case, when it's a case that the person is chayiv, he really did something that is deserving of this punishment, in that case, everybody agrees that you give him over. That's case number one. The other extreme is the case like we started with, where they just say, give us one person and we're going to kill all of you. In that case, everybody agrees that you don't give anybody, and even if it means everybody gets killed. The point where there's a machlokes between Reish Lakish and Rabbi Yochanan is in a case where they single out one person, even though that person didn't do anything wrong, right? In other words, we've got in this caravan, Reuben, Shimon, Levi, Yehuda, Dan, Naphtali, Gad, Asher, and they say, give us Dan, right? Give us that person. And we say, what did he do? And they say, we just don't like the way he looks. Yeah, give us Dan, or we're going to kill all of you. So now there's a machlokas between Reish Lakish and Rabbi Yochanan. What's this machlokas about? What's this machlokas about? Who could tell me? It's a very interesting idea here. What would be the possible reason? Somebody mentioned earlier, I didn't know, maybe Shir, you said, somebody said, or Michal, you're killing a person. You can never kill a person to save a life. So why would Rabbi Yochanan say over here that just because they singled this guy out because they don't like the way he looks, right? They feel he insulted them, but he didn't do a crime. He insulted them, so why should that change anything?
You're not the one choosing.
But so what? I'm giving him over. Why is that not like?
It's not choosing his blood.
But it's like kill him or I'll kill you, right? So why I'm giving him over? Why is that any different? Why is it any different? You're close to it. You're close to it. So the answer is because you could say that he's a rodef. You could call him now a rodef, potentially, right? Maybe a rodef means a person who is chasing after somebody else to kill them, right? So you can kill that person. Now, the halacha is, even if the rodef is not doing it on purpose, for example, a woman who is giving birth to a baby, and she's going to die in childbirth unless we abort the baby, a partial birth abortion. There's Mamash Mishnah about this, a partial birth abortion. So the halacha is that we do it. We're going to kill the baby in order to save the mother, and the Rambam says because the baby is a rodef. The baby, even though the baby is not meaning to do it, the baby has no conscious, this to it. But this, unfortunately, another terrible story that happened in the Holocaust and other times in Klal Yisrael's history, terrible things. But mothers having to smother their babies because they're crying. Right? People who are hiding from the Nazis. This happened in many scenarios like this. People are hiding from the Nazis. They're in a hideout. They hear that the Nazis are searching on the other side of the wall or on the side of the secret thing in the basement, and a baby starts to cry. So the halacha is that you're allowed to, if not mechuyev, to kill the baby, so that the baby shouldn't make noise, because we should never know from these types of decisions. But the idea that the baby becomes a rodef now, this baby's crying, even though the baby has no consciousness and doesn't mean to and has no thought to. And in halacha, we view it as if the Nazi is the murderer, right? Not the mother, right? It's the Nazi that's the one who's causing this death. With that idea, the baby is then considered to be a rodef, and it would be permissible to, if not required, to kill the baby in order to save other people. So there's a tzad to say over here the same idea that since they're singling out this person. In other words, if we decide to give up somebody else, that's not going to help anything. They don't want the other person; they want this guy. So it turns out that this is the guy that's really causing us this danger now, even though he didn't choose to do it and it's not his fault. Okay, but still, this is a machlokas. Okay, this is a machlokas between Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish. According to Reish Lakish, even in that scenario, you're not allowed to give the person over. Okay, let's take a look. Number 2 is the Shulchan Aruch. Now let's see how this halacha comes out, and we'll see it remains as a machlokas. Give us one of you and we'll kill him. Okay, so this is according to the opinion of, right, Rav Yochanan, right, who says that even if the person is not chayiv misa, right, even if they just singled out one person, so you could give that person over. V'yesh omrim, There are those that say, no, that even in a situation where he's singled out, don't give him over, unless he actually is chayav misa like Sheva ben Bichri, meaning that he actually did something that he deserves the punishment that they're coming after him for. Okay. The same thing happens as with rape. Also, the halacha continues. It's the same thing. Like what happened by Lot in Stone, that they said, give us your daughter, or we'll kill everybody. Because the halacha is there also you don't give over a woman for that either. Okay, I want to just point out a beautiful idea to you. Just like a side point, but on this topic, but there's a beautiful Orach Chaim on the parsha. In Parshas Miketz, when the Torah talks about when Yosef and his brothers encounter each other for the first time. Yosef is now the viceroy of Mitzrayim, right? He's sitting there, he's the one who's in charge of everything. Everybody who comes to Egypt to get food has to come to Yosef and interact with him and get the food from him. And his brothers come and he sees them there, right? And he accuses them of being spies. And what does he tell them? If you're telling me the truth, so then one of you stay here, right, in prison, and the rest of you go and bring back Binyamin, right? So what did he say to them? What did he say to them? He said, basically, give me one of you or I'll kill you all, right? And he's accusing them of being spies. He's telling them, basically, you're all chayav misa, you're spying, I'm going to kill you. That's what they're afraid of, right? He tells them, okay, I'll give you a way out. What's your way out? Give me one of you, and the rest of you go and come back and get your brother. You hear? So listen to this Orach Chaim, right? So beautiful how he connects it to this. I saw this one here. Okay, so im kenim atem, right? The pasuk says, if you are in fact honest with me, if you're kenim, if you're truthful with me, so then this is what you'll do. You'll go and you'll do this process. You'll give me one of you, and the rest of you will go and get your brother. Yizbar al derech omram zal b'Yerushalmi perek ches trumos. This is understood based on the Yerushalmi that we just learned. Tanya sias b'nei adam. המהלכים בדרך ופגעו בהם גויים ואמרו להם תנו לנו אחד מכם ונהרגו זו ואם לאו נהרגו כולם אפילו כולם נהרגו לא ימסרו אחד נחל ישראל ייחדו להם ימסרו וכולו והוא אמרו. So now what did Yosef say to them? אם קינם אתם פירוש אתם יודעים בעצמכם אם האמס איתכם אחיכם אחד פירוש אחד מכם ולא ייחדו להם יסר כי אין ירס מוות לא יהרגו כולם ולא ימסרוהו. Saying such a beautiful idea. It's saying like this. You guys know the halacha, right? This is like you have to understand how the Achronim learn, you guys know the halacha, right? That if you're really guilty, then you know that giving me one of you is asur to do, because you're like giving him over for misa, right? So im keinim atem, if you're really legit and you're not guilty, then you'll agree to give me one of your brothers. That's how the Orach Chaim learns this. You guys got this? So beautiful. You should be in yeshiva if you get this. He if you're not telling me the truth, then you guys know it's awesome for you to leave one of your brothers with me. And that's what he said, that was the test. Oh, so nice. Anyway, okay, he goes on to continue it, that maybe this is a case of the Yachidem. Etc. Okay, anyway, you can see how the Orach Chaim beautifully learns this into this idea. Anyway, we see from here the halacha is very clear about this. The halacha states that if the goyim try to cut a deal, even if the deal is to save a lot of lives, even if the deal is to try to save tens of thousands of people, but if that deal involves giving over people for killing, we are not allowed to do it, right? It's asur to do. Now I want you to take a look and see in the sources how they dealt with this in the different Judenrats. It could be that my lines got cut off a little bit here. Yeah, okay, so let's take a look at this page 329. This is talking about a town in the Ukraine called Skalat. It was a Ukrainian town that was taken over by the Nazis right towards the end of the war. There was only in 42, 43, 44 that the Ukraine and Hungary fell. So be'ayara Skalat higiu anshe ha-Judenrat va'anshe ha-mishtara Yudim l'shafel musari od yoser amuk. They reached a very low point of morality. The Judenrat in these places. He's talking here about bad things that the Judenrat got involved in. B'yomim Yud v'Yud Aleph Cheshvan Tafshin Gimel the 22nd and 21st, 22nd of October 1942, Nercha Aktia Bayara, there was an action that was set up in the town. L'shem kach higiu l'sham anshe SS u'militzia Ukraine. So the SS and the Ukrainian guards came. Le'ezratam shel harotzchim bo iskani ad Judenrat v'mishtara Yehudit, and along came the Judenrat and the Jewish police. They came to be involved. Huftach lehem, they were guaranteed shetmurat ezratam lo yifku heim u'bnei mishpachoteim. They were guaranteed that if they help, we're not going to hurt you or your family. The tzigei Judenrat v'anshe mishtara avru im hagermanim lebayis bebayis. They literally went door to door, house to house. Ubiyom rishon shel aktzia asfu be'achzarius rabba ke 2,000 nefesh sheruchzu bebinyan beit hakneset. They went, these Jewish people, Jewish police people, went into houses, dragging people into the shul. La'achar sha'chotvim nis'aifu u'ne'ercha l'chvod harotzchim su'uda mefu'eres b'livui tizmoret bebeis ha'Judenrat. And then after this, there was a big su'uda in the Judenrat with a Jewish band. L'macharat nimshachu achetifus b'sach hakol nishluchu ke 3,000 Yudim l'machaneh Belchak. The 3,000 Jews were sent to a death camp. Shnayim b'chavri ha'Judenrat shenechtafu b'yom rishon shel akzi al yidei ha'germanim shuchru tumas 25 Yehudim chodashim. Shehutzu min al-bunkerim v'tzufel mishloach. You hear this? There are 2 people from the Judenrat that were taken on the first day. Yeah? And they said, okay, we'll let them out if you get me 25 in exchange for each. And they did it. They went ahead and they freed 2 members of the Judenrat in exchange for 50 other Jews. Yeah? Yeah, they got again for another party the next night in the Judenrat. It's unbelievable. The 7th of April, Nercha Aktzia Nosefet B'Skalat. Be'ezras HaMishtara Yehudit, and Nechtafim Huvru L'Shlosha Barot Gedolim Me'achor Ya'ariyah V'Sham Nirtzachu. Another time they gathered people together and they killed them. L'fnei Ovolas HaKarbanos B'Makom HaRetzach Ruchzu Kulam Beis HaKnesses. Before they went there, they all gathered together in the shul. V'Sham Allah Alabima Beryl B'no Shel Rav Binyamin Volovich. Lamdan Ish Tov Lev Bal Tfilo Bal Tokea. The kids, a man got up in shul, right, the night before they were going to be taken out to be killed. Hu Noam B'fnei Nasafim Ba'amar. This is our day of judgment. Yeah, we're going to die al Kiddush Hashem. We shouldn't fight this. This is the Ratzon Hashem. This is Hashkacha. That what's happening to us. Yeah, unbelievable. They said he was the first person that was killed because when they got to the pits and they were told to undress, he refused to undress, and they killed him first. This person, he was the first person to die al Kiddush Hashem over there. Okay, but Kitzer, we see that he brings down here the terrible amount of that the Judenrat was involved and how they accomplished that. I happened to be 1 year on the Poland trip. I was speaking about this whole topic with Rabbi Russell, and he pointed out to me this idea that if you think about it, there's no way the Holocaust could have happened if they followed this halacha. You understand? If everywhere they went, the Jews of that town refused to help. They refused to agree. There's no way the Nazis would have been able to have organized and systematically gone in there and exterminated them. There's just no way. There's no, it would have been house-to-house fighting. It would have, it would have been like, there's just no way to do it. It was only through people who didn't keep this halacha, people who were, again, some of them were Rishayim, Gemurim, and some of them were working L'Shem Shemayim. The very famous story of the head of the Judenrat of Warsaw, a person by the name of Chernikovsky, who tried very, very hard the whole war. They say he was a very good person. He was not a Russian. He tried very hard the whole war to save and save and save. And towards the end, when he realized that no matter what was going to happen, they were going to kill him. No matter what was going to happen, there was going to be this extermination. He committed suicide. He killed himself. He took cyanide tablets, and he refused to go along with this. So let's just finish with this. If you take a look at the last page here, 332, the last page. So this is from a tshuva after the war. This is from a letter written after the war by a person, Rav Nassim Gestetner. He's a rabbi. He's alive in Bnei Brak. So he was asked about a lot of these questions about how the Judenrat should have conducted themselves, what could they have done, what should they have done differently, and he was asked also specifically about this thing: is a person justified to take their own life under these circumstances? If you have a situation where a person feels they're in a place where they either give over people to be killed by the Nazis, or they are making the decision to let the Nazis in and kill thousands of people. So is a person allowed to take their own life under these circumstances? We'll finish with this. And the question that you ask about is it permissible for a person to commit suicide rather than take part in giving over Jews to the Nazis. Hine bebeis Yosef in Arasimim, the place where we were just learning, Hevi the Sefer Orchos Chaim, the Pligi Rishonim Mutar La'abid Atmul Adas Kedei Linotzal Miyasurim Ayin Sham. So there's a question: is a person allowed to commit suicide to save themselves from terrible suffering? Like what they call today physician-assisted suicide. You have a person who's terribly suffering. Let's say they have a very, very painful condition. There's no cure for it. There's nothing that the medicine can do for them, and they want to overdose on a sedative that'll just put them to sleep and kill them. So there's a question whether that's permissible to do or not for a person to stop themselves from suffering terribly. With Shalos Juvas Lahodas Nasa and Herachnu Bazeh in a sefer he wrote about this extensively. Ulam heichi she'ena choshesh miyisurim elash rotzelis abed kadesh liyitzayach limsor acherim. He says, again, nobody's judging the actions of people in a war like this and what they did and what they went through. But he's saying, if you're asking al pi halacha, is it the right thing to do? Is a person allowed to kill themselves? If they would ask the shaylas, he would say no. He says that just like you don't want to give over another Jew to the Nazis, so taking your own life is the same thing. You're also taking a life of a Jew, and you don't have a right to do that. If let's say if a person is going to refuse to do it, then the Nazis are going to kill him. That's the halacha, that a person should say, okay, kill me rather than have me give over somebody else.
You are allowed to do that?
Do what?
Like if you are in a crowd or whatever, and they say bring out one person, and so you decide to go out.
Yes, that you're allowed to do. You are allowed to, for sure, that a person is allowed to volunteer to save the other people. But in this case, he's killing himself. He's not saving anybody. He's just killing a Jew. He's killing himself for no reason. It's not helping anything. It's not saving anything. But, so that's what he said. If the Nazis will kill him, so then he's dying al Kiddush Hashem, that the Nazis are killing him. But a Jew doesn't have a right to take his own life.
Even if he's just got, you see your stories of some Jews who just walked up to the electric fence and just...
Again, nobody's judging a person under those circumstances, and whether they but for a person
the second they got there and they saw the fence, they didn't even want to go through the suffering, and no Nazi said specifically that they're going to kill this person. This Jew decided to do it on his own.
A lot of people committed suicide. I'm saying that doesn't mean that it was okay to do. So you said suicide is not mutter. In a situation where a person is suffering terribly, we said there's questions about it, but it's not that's not but that's not the point over here. Here, this suicide didn't save anybody or anything. It was just he couldn't deal with this dilemma, so he killed himself. So he's saying that's not the right thing to do. Okay, Mr. Shem, we'll talk about happier things next class.
Thank you.